My dad died December 15th, 1985. I was a sophomore in high school. It was sudden. It was right before Christmas. He was only 45. My mom was 44. And he really hadn't had any health problems. He wasn't an exerciser. In 1985, a lot of people weren't. He had a relatively stressful job. He was a professor, first at Syracuse and then at SUNY Albany. But he loved his job. He wasn't heavy, but he did smoke. And he drank. Not to excess, but he smoked. About a week or 10 days before he died, he thought he was having some heart trouble, and he went to the ER, and they told him it was heartburn. So he came back relieved. Other than that, there had not been any sort of warning. The night he died, it was a Sunday night. Said goodnight, went upstairs, and I just remember my sister waking me up shortly after midnight saying, "Wake up, Daddy had a heart attack." And it's like an otherworldly, it's an out-of-body experience.
When did the media turn to all the lies?
2015.
What happened?
Trump. There is such a thing as Trump derangement syndrome. He literally drove them crazy. They're just so agenda-driven. It's not great to be an ideological journalist. You're much better off if you really don't like either side and you're not in love with one or the other. All these people when Joe Biden was stepping down, I love him, I love the man. Stop that. We shouldn't love our politicians. We should be kicking the tires on our politicians. All of them. Trump too. If you're a fan at home, you're a voter, that's one thing. If you're a member of the media, that's not your job. You're not a cheerleader. They all sacrifice their objectivity to get him. And despite their personal beliefs, could never check it. It's fine to actually privately root for somebody and want this candidate to win, or that's human. But to show it, to openly try to make it happen every night on the air is something very different. And they started doing it in 15. They declared openly that they would now no longer be objective. He's a racist, he's a sexist, he's a whatever. That's not what they were doing. They were reporting night after night that he was these terrible things, that he had said these terrible things. And they continue to do it. There was a rising conversation on the internet and elsewhere around Mother's Day by these leftists that we don't need children. More and more women are choosing not to have them. More and more women who have them regret it. And how you really might want to rethink your decision to have them at all. And you had AOC coming out there and saying it might be environmentally unsound and irresponsible. So JD Vance goes out there and says, these people are nuts. They sound like sociopaths. We should not be ruled by childless cat ladies who don't think children are worthwhile. He was making a point about they want 16-year-olds to vote. He said, if we're going to give 16-year-olds the right to vote, then we should give their parents a heavier weight to their vote, and the single people will have less of a weight. He said it was a thought experiment. It wasn't like, I have a policy proposal. Single people without children shouldn't have their vote counted as much as the married people. And he said, I understand people who want kids and can't have them. That's tragic. But I do think net-net it's better to have kids because I think it helps ground you and it gives you better perspective on life and your problems. And none of that is controversial. But you didn't get any of that context, the lead-ups.
Is this the end of mainstream media? Are we seeing its demise right now?
Yes. We're living in the end times for corporate media, I guess we'll call it. They're not mainstream. Is it mainstream to go out there every day and say that guys should be allowed to punch women in the face at the Olympics and pretend they're women? That's not mainstream. You and I are the mainstream. They're not. Is it mainstream to say open the borders? I hate that term because it's a misnomer. But yes, we're living through the end times for them, which is a glorious thing. We should be celebrating that. That's one of the few great things we have to think about right now in public life. That and the Supreme Court are the two things I wrap myself in like a blanket when I go to bed at night.
What do you think the final nail in the coffin will be?
If Trump wins again.
That'll be the end.
Yes, because they'll do the same thing they did the first time. It was a priest who said to a friend of mine, people complain, why do I have to deal with the middleman? I want to get an annulment. I just want my divorce to be recognized by God. I don't want to have to do anything after I've done the legal thing. And he said, but those same people, if a family member is dying, I'm their first call to get in there and give last rites. And that's true. My sister died 2 years ago, and when that priest came in there to give her the last rites, it was an important moment. I was relieved he was there. That sounds crazy that I would need a man to tell me I'm good with God after having a divorce that was totally legal and finding a new man who I love and making 3 beautiful children and living in love and harmony with all of us. But we're all raised with these beliefs. It's a form of indoctrination, right? You go every Sunday and you hear the same messaging and you go to Sunday school and then you go to confirmation and CCD, all the stuff. And it's very hard to just say, well, that no longer works for me, so I reject it. It's baked in there.
Yeah, I get it. Some of the stuff I worry about is things like the COVID vaccine. I don't ever want to affect somebody's decision-making process off bullshit that was put out on my show. I feel a huge responsibility to that.
The COVID stuff was very tricky. We were turned on by so many authorities that we were supposed to trust. It's almost like too big to get your arms around what happened there. And I actually think it's one of the reasons why people can't go back there. Like if you do stories on COVID, they don't get numbers. And it's not because, in particular, the right half of the country doesn't have very strong feelings about it.
Yeah.
It's triggering. It's like people are pissed. Nothing changed. We screwed over our kids and ourselves. A lot of us took the vaccine and feel unhealthier as a result of it. People are worried about their children if they gave it to them. So it's one of those avoidance things now. But I did not get all of COVID right. I think I did okay. I'd give myself a B+ on my understanding of what was going on there. But it's very hard when you have so many previously trusted entities lying to you.
Yeah. What did it feel like for you to sit down in front of Putin?
Great. I enjoyed that thoroughly.
Did you?
Yeah.
Were you fearful at all?
Only in one moment. He's definitely had journalists killed. It's a problem. And we actually had a plane on standby because we were worried that something could happen. We sat together, I've interviewed him now 5 times. And it was when I was moderating his economic conference with Prime Minister Modi of India that I got in his face about the chemical weapons in Syria and how Russia had helped fund Assad. And he got really pissed. That was the one thing I asked him, and of all the things that he was genuinely angry about, and you could almost see the switch flip in his head where he went to genuine anger. And I remember being like, whoa, I got to pull back. I've crossed some imaginary line I didn't know was there, a tripwire. And I did pull back. And enough that he continued to grant me more interviews and so on. But what a dynamic, fascinating, terrible man.
To go over there and put yourself in that situation that takes a lot of courage.
It was crazy. The post-George Floyd behavior. The country losing its mind. I was like, these are lies. These are all lies about the police, about us, and they're lies that are tearing at the very fabric of America. And I need to say all the things that need to be said to correct them. My brother is a cop, a great cop. Now he's retired, but he was a lieutenant in Albany. Such an honorable cop the entire time he was in service. He was beaten to within an inch of his life by a gang. They broke his neck. He was in the hospital for a long time. Never came out bitter. He was so upstanding. And to hear these people smear cops writ large as just all racist, all bastards, as they were saying at the time, I was like, bullshit. I couldn't believe those protests where they were making people say Black Lives Matter. This is America. We don't make people say anything. We were being lied to on a massive gaslighting scale. Most leftists vote for abortion. They're obsessed with abortion. Man, that's a big issue for them. They love abortion. So that's their top priority, and they're voting based on that.
Man, like, what's happening to these kids?
I know.
And love bombing them into LGBTQ, LMNOP, whatever they're calling it today. It's like there's a recruitment going on in school. Like, how can you be for that shit? How can you be for MAPS?
Right.
Minor attracted persons. No. Are they uninformed? Do they not know this is happening?
This is like the time when we used to lobotomize people who were a little slow. What a stain on our record as Americans and on the medical community. And we're kind of doing that right now. It's the same thing to children. We're not lobotomizing them, but we're sterilizing them. We're chopping off their body parts. We're ending their sex life, any chance at a normal sex life. Most people don't realize if you go from puberty blockers to cross-sex hormones directly, you're probably going to be sterile and you'll never achieve orgasm. What in the actual... And they want to tell us that's informed consent that a 12-year-old can give. It's barbaric. It's evil. I think we need to make the studio brighter. You're in the dark room too much.
Yeah, you might be right.
I'm just saying.
Put some windows in.
When you start to feel like that, I think that's not healthy thinking. That's a dark place to be. It's just too overwhelming. You can't do anything if it's biblical. What can you do? Somebody else is totally in charge and it's not going to end well. Or it will if you're a believer. My son Thatcher was asking me the other day, he goes, when Jesus comes back, does that mean we all die? Those of us who are like alive and here, we die? So we shouldn't be rooting for him to come back soon, right? It's a good question. It's kind of complicated. Let's fight the fights we can fight. Let's manage these things one thing at a time. Let's not take on biblical. It's too big and daunting. We can speak out about the trans insanity. We can encourage people to find faith. We can speak up against the things that we know are wrong and find some good in it. There are things that you can do, and I think that's the key to staying okay.
I'll take that advice. I'll lighten it up in here a little bit. But
you just saw Jennifer Aniston tweeted out about J.D. Vance's childless cat lady comments. I don't know if you saw that. She came out and said, hope your daughter never needs IVF, which you oppose. Lie. He doesn't oppose IVF. He signed on to the Ted Cruz, Katie Britt bill protecting it in all 50 states. So she wanted to stand up for childless cat ladies because she's one of them. What has she said about the women? What did she say about the girl who got her face punched out by the man in the boxing ring? Zero. What has she said about Peyton McNabb, who's suffering permanent nerve damage and brain damage from getting hit so hard in the face and the head by a volleyball player in North Carolina? Nothing. What'd she say about that girl who got all of her teeth knocked out in a field hockey game by a boy pretending to be a girl on her team? Zero. So I don't give a shit what she thinks about J.D. Vance and childless cat ladies. She masquerades as some protector of women. She's quite the contrary. She's never stood up on any of these issues. This is the one she comes out on? You don't want childless cat ladies to be offended? That's where you're gonna plant your flag?